Peace, you already know who it is. Omar Nasser Renew, we back in here once again for another Q&A. So as people begin to come in, I begin to speak. We are now coming upon the cusp of the Libra Scorpio season. What's up, Grin? What's up, M. Soto? Peace, peace. We are now on the cusp, or coming up upon the cusp of Libra and Scorpio season, according to the Gregorian calendar, right? So from this perspective, what's up, kiddies? What's up, Juice Girl? Salute to everybody. We understand Libra to be the mentalist, and we understand Scorpio to be the mystic. So in the last 30 days, we have been experiencing the energy of the mentalist. Everybody has been mental, getting their mind right, making their mental adjustments. So the last 30 days or the last season of Libra has all been about mental adjustment, which is based on the air element. And I'm right by the street, so I may have to talk a little louder, so excuse it. Because I'll turn off in a little bit, but in the meantime, now we are approaching the energy of the mystic. And when we are coming upon the energy of the mystic, we are dealing with a fixed water. So we're not dealing with moving waters. That's Cancer or that's Pisces. Because we're dealing with Scorpio, we're dealing with fixed waters. Fixed waters is all about going deep into the ocean. Because if you look at water, you're only going to see a reflection. So if you're looking at water, it's only going to show you reflection. You don't really get to see what's on the other side of that veil until you actually dig or dive into the waters. So all the waters show you is a reflection of yourself until you actually submerge yourself into the waters. So the Scorpio season is all about submerging yourself into the waters. And as you are submerging yourself into the waters, of course, you discover the treasures that are hidden underneath the sea. We know that there's many treasures in the waters. See, most people focus on the treasures in the earth, and materialism, so on and so forth. They don't even think about the treasures that are hidden within the waters. We got everything from Lemurian culture, Atlantean culture. There's lost continents buried. There's all type of monuments. There's all type of history and structure hidden in these waters that most people know nothing about. But it's supposed to be that way because most people are moved by the fixed reality. It's only those who are mystic who even care about the hidden treasures within the waters, because it doesn't necessarily fulfill the physical plane, but it will fulfill your soul. It will make you more at peace with who and what you are, because you see from which you came. Right? It's more so a soul cleansing when you study what's underneath the waters. And when you study what's underneath the waters, you get a certain type of purification that you cannot experience in the earth plane. There's a certain tranquility that comes with finding the hidden treasures in the waters. Versus, if you were seeking treasures of the earth, it gives you a different response. It's the same example where when a person receives a check, you get a certain type of response. But when you are educated about your heritage beyond your known family history, your great-grandparents and grandparents and pretty much the people that you have actually met, when you see the secrets of your bloodline by studying the waters, because we know blood is of the water element, so that's why I'm speaking about the blood. What carries us forward is what's within the blood. So not only do we strive to keep our blood healthy, we also want to seek the mysteries that are hidden within the blood, and we have to do so through the water element. Now, of course, the water element and the fire element go hand in hand. So because the water element and the fire element goes hand in hand, the water hidden treasures, as I said earlier, gives you a different type of response, but it is not separate from the response in which you get from the earth, because the water and the earth are both negative elements. You have positive elements and you have negative elements. The positive elements are fire and air, and the negative elements are water and earth. So because you are dealing with two negative elements, they are able to correlate and correspond with each other harmoniously. All right? So because they can correspond, I know my voice is changing, but I have to adapt to the environment. You know, it's just a little test, right? You know, now I just have a reason to yell, you know, because it just blends in with the environment. Anyway, because the earth and the water are both negative elements, they correspond and they can feed off of each other. So you feeding your soul by going deep into the mysticism of the waters will help you in the earth plane as well. It will actually enhance your earth element, which is your physical body and all of your physical responses. So going back to the Scorpio energy, as we are on the cusp, Scorpio deals with fixed waters. That also takes us to the 8th house of astrology. The 8th house deals with other people's resources and the access you have to other people's resources. Because the 8th house is opposite of the 2nd house, which represents your bank account. So in terms of your personal possessions, that is the 2nd house. So because the 8th house is opposite of the 2nd house, which is personal, the 8th house is a extra personal sign. You have the personal signs, then you have the interpersonal or the extra personal. They are more so worldly signs than you have personal signs, or positive signs and negative signs, or light signs and dark signs, however you want to break it down. So because the 8th house is dealing with other people's resources, that's why it's normally associated with the occult and the dark side and all that. All these darker arts deals with the 8th house. Because whenever you're dealing with water elements, you're dealing with concealment. And what I mean by concealment is, whenever you're dealing with Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces, because those are the 3 water signs, you're dealing with concealment. Because Cancer correlates to the 4th house, Scorpio correlates to the 8th house, and Pisces correlates to the 12th house. Whenever you're dealing with water houses, you're dealing with a level of concealment. The 4th house corresponds to your home. Your home is obviously concealed. People have no idea what's going on in your home other than what you show, right? Then, if we're dealing with the 8th house, we're dealing with other people's resources, meaning it is also concealed because it's not your own. Nobody can see, like, oh, that's his, that or that nobody knows what you truly have access to. You may have the keys to 10 homes. Who knows what those 10 homes contain and what they are worth? Nobody knows, unless you tell them. Then we're dealing with the 12th house, which corresponds to your dreams as well as your karma. And that's not something you can just readily tell from a person. You can't readily tell a person's karma. So whenever you're dealing with the water element, you're dealing with a level of concealment. And this is why Scorpio corresponds to the mystic. And that's why for the next 30 days, we will be dealing with a lot of mysticism through the energy of the Scorpio, through the energy of the 8th house. Right? So hopefully that makes more sense. And if we want to take it a step further, to incorporate numerology, we know the 8 corresponds to Saturn, and we know Saturn corresponds to Satan. We don't have to go no deeper than that, right? So if we put both of those together, the house of the occult, the house of concealment, then corresponded to Saturn or Satan, the orbit, dealing with restriction, because Saturn corresponds with restriction and restraint and discipline and longevity. and being able to see something through. For the long run, Saturn deals with all things long term. So marriage, anything that is long term, old age, elders, all that corresponds to Saturn. So we have the long term, all right, the long term access to other people's resources. Now, I don't necessarily mean when I say other people's resources like actual personal people. This also corresponds to corporations, right? So this corresponds to corporate interests. So for those who have corporate connections where you may drive a company car, you may have access to company resources and, grants and all these things, right? So it also represents corporations and being able to access their resources as well. So it's not dealing with personal people. It's more so dealing with banks, right? If the second house corresponds to your bank account, then the eighth house would be the actual bank itself, right? So the eighth house, you can say, corresponds to actual banks. So if we wanted to, because you can correspond to 12 zodiac signs, say any dimension on the planet as well. We don't really go that deep into astrology nowadays. That's more so ancient art. However, you have a physical, like for example, you can correlate Pisces with hospitals. So if we wanted to name banks, you're like, okay, well, what zodiac sign will be associated with banks? Then, of course, you're like, okay, well, Scorpio represents other people's resources. Well, where do people put their resources? Into banks, right? So the eighth house will correspond to banks. So having access to those types of resources. Why? Because the banks can give you grants, loans. The banks have more power than just holding people's money. Like the bank gives you access to many different things, right? So hopefully that's a better understanding of the eighth house in context to the second house, Scorpio in context to Taurus, because we all have opposite signs, and the secret element of any sign is within their opposite sign. So for example, if you are a Scorpio, which is a water sign, because Taurus is your opposite sign, which is a earth sign, it is for the Scorpio to also master the earth element. But that is hidden. That is a hidden element. That's not something you can necessarily just put it right in front of you and readily understand. That's when you are dealing with magic. That's when you're dealing with concealment. That's when you're dealing with the opposite. So whatever your sign is, whatever your opposite sign is, that's what you secretly have to master, or that's what you have to master on the other side when it comes to mysticism. Because mysticism deals with dealing with the other side. What I mean by the other side is all activities that are corresponding to the astral body. We already understand we have 7 dimensions of the body, right? You got the physical body all the way up to the etheric body. So the next to the physical body will be the astral body. So anything concerning the astrals, you have to do so through the water element, right? Because the water element also deals with shape-shifting and transmutation, because the water can pretty much morph and be anything. So water is formless. Because water is formless, you can put it in whatever shape or form that you choose to put it in. So you are under control of the form, and it is not held or limited to any form. It is all forms. So it is essentially a aspect of chaos, because that reminds us of the element of chaos, where if you can take on any form, you can't be labeled anything, so they call it chaos. And this is the whole essence behind chaos theory, all right, which is a branch of mathematics. Because once we study mathematics, we're studying everything on the planet. But it's also the hardest thing to do, to understand the symbols of mathematics, because they are pulled from every language. Mathematics has a piece of every language or every culture of the world once you get into higher and higher dimensions. But of course, this is strictly symbolism. So when you're dealing with strictly symbolism, that is the language of the subconscious mind. And we know the subconscious mind projects our reality. So the more we acquaint ourselves with symbols, then the more realities we can manifest. We are only limited to what we know. And what I mean by that is you cannot visualize something that you've never seen before. If I ask you to visualize something that you have no image of, you can't do it. So we are only limited by what we actually put into our memory. And that's why I emphasize committing these arts to heart, because you can only activate what you know. If you can't activate something instantaneously, then you don't know it. So if I say something Aleph, and the symbol of Aleph don't instantly pop into your head, you will miss it. It'll just be another word that I said, and it'll go right past. And that's mostly how magic is worked upon the subconscious mind, because it's not noticeable. That's what marketing is. That's what advertisement is. That's why when you see commercials, you have certain responses towards the imagery, not just commercials, movies, and all things that you are passive to. The reason why it has a certain effect on you is not having an effect on your consciousness, which we think it is. It's more so affecting the subconscious mind, because that is the language of the subconscious mind. It is all understanding the meaning of symbolism. The language of the subconscious mind, because the subconscious mind is connected to your emotions. All right? And emotions, obviously, is connected to the water element. This is why Scorpios are known to be very extreme and have outbursts, right? Because we're dealing with the element of water. Water can be life-giving as it nourishes the body, and it could also take life through hurricanes and so on and so forth. So Earth can get very pleasant or very violent depending on how you choose to work the magic based on the symbolisms in which you know by heart. And the reason it's called by heart is because all magic has to operate from the heart center. As we know, the heart is more powerful. This is where we feel emotions. Where do you feel emotions? You feel emotions in the chest. You don't really feel it in your head. You feel your thoughts in your head, but if we're talking about emotions, it's more so resonating at the intelligence of the heart. It's the intelligence of the heart in which can control the emotions. So if you can control this heart center, then you can control your emotions. And if you can control your emotions, you can influence your subconscious mind. And if you can influence your subconscious mind, then you can influence your reality. Right? This is all the process of metamorphosis, meditation, and this is all working within Scorpio, because Scorpio represents the energy of transformation. Then this goes to the 13th degree of the major arcana, which is the energy of death. And we know death is also dualistic. It can bring life and it can take life, meaning death is just the opposite of life, because you could not have life without death. We understand that they are connected, they are one and the same. The energy of, you can't really speak about life without speaking about death. In order for something to be born, something has to die. In order for you to manifest a new reality, you have to sacrifice your old reality. You don't get to keep multiple realities, right? You don't get to keep multiple realities, not within the context of the physical plane, but we have 4 dimensions. The 4 worlds of the Kabbalah, with the 4 dimensions of consciousness. So you can say we have different realities, but in terms of the physical reality, it only has room for one at a time. So in order for us to manifest anything brand new, we have to sacrifice the old. Right? That's so the physical reality in the physical world, as the earth is opposite of water. Well, not opposite, but they are both negative elements, so they can correspond. Because the physical reality represents sacrifice, and that's essentially the element of alchemy that we have to acquaint ourselves with. Sacrifice, meaning you can only occupy one reality at a time. And we know all change first starts mentally, because we cannot get caught up in the energy of what do we have to do physically to change. Because we are physical beings, we tend to get wrapped up in the physical in terms of, okay, what do I have to do? What do I have to do? What do I have to do? What can I do different? What can I do different? How can I stop doing this? What should I start doing? Do I need to do this? Do I do? It's like it doesn't ever start in the physical. It always start in the mental, because we know that's the first law of Hermeticism, the law of mentalism. 100% of reality is mental, and because 100% of reality is mental, everything has to start in the mind. So because everything starts in the mind, we don't have to worry about what to do physically, because we already know the physical body follows the thoughts. Once your thoughts are corrected, then your physical body will follow. Your physical body will follow suit. It doesn't go the other way around. You have people that think, once I correct my physical plane, then my mind changes or my reality changes, but that's actually opposite. So don't get caught up in getting twisted up Well, you have to change something physical first. It does not start first in the physical, it starts first in the mind. And because it starts in the mind, and we already discussed that we think about 60,000 thoughts per day. And because we think about 60,000 thoughts per day, it's all about understanding how do you get control over these 60,000 thoughts. And these 60,000 thoughts don't all take place in the conscious mind. It also takes place in the subconscious mind as well as the unconscious mind. So of course, this takes us right back to the subconscious mind, which takes us right back to the water element, which goes back to the original point of you are only limited by the symbols you know. Because if I ask you to imagine a symbol you've never seen before, you could not imagine it because you have no reference point. So our reference point controls how far we are able to go into the future. And that's why they say your past influences your future, because your past does influence your future because it's based on what you have committed to memory, because the past just represents your memory. Right? Whenever you think about the past, you have to utilize your memory banks. And you see that? We go right back to banks. Memory banks, storages of memory. All you have is your storages of memory because those are your reference points, which is your Akashic records. Your Akashic records is the same thing as your memory banks, your storehouse of information. What do you truly know? Like, everybody does not base their reality on every day and what they're learning every day. We have things that we know that we rely on. Like, whatever you feel is real, that is stored in your memory banks, and that is what truly influences your reality, is what you choose to store in your memory banks. And we understand this is dealing with the water element, which is formless. This is why reality can be altered. Reality can be altered because the water element is formless, and because the water element is formless, it can be altered and molded into whatever we want it to be. This is why you can have the worst past on earth, but if you commit different symbols into your memory banks, because a bad life is just a bad set of symbols. Whenever you think about anything, you're just going to be thinking about symbols. Whether good symbols, bad symbols, whether it's a bunch of smiles or whether it's a bunch of frowns, whether it's a bunch of resources or not resources, it's all symbols. All memory is essentially based on symbols. So based on what symbols you have committed to memory, that will determine how everything influences you from the inside out. So going back to the original point, your memory banks determine your reality. So it's all about what you store in your memory banks, and all symbols represent infinite realities. So it's all about what symbols have you stored into your memory bank so you can manifest those infinite realities. All right? So this is the true essence of the energy of Scorpio, the season we are in. So I just wanted to start with that message. Of course, I know that this is a Q&A, but I just wanted to get the wheels turning, get people's minds focused on things, and now we can focus on questions. I've seen a couple questions already, so let's see where we at. So let me stroll back up, and we'll start. Peace, a goddess. Peace, divine flavor. Peace, GC 360. Peace, Jizzly. Shane, Jizzly. It's twisting my tongue. Peace to you. Peace, Avery. Peace, Skeet Mass. Peace, Denise. Peace, K Jim. Peace, Miss Liba. Peace, Kareem. Peace, Dank Wizard. Peace, the Scorpio formula. So there's everybody. So let's get to these questions. Can you break down the 12th house? So the 12th house deals with all things that are concealed. So you say you have your sun and moon in the 12th house. So that will represent an energy of concealment, meaning that is not something that is seen. So essentially, if our sun represents our direction in life and your sun is in the 12th house, meaning it's like that would say like you don't really want people to know. where you're going in life. And if you also have your moon there in the 12th house, that means your emotions are also concealed. So your goals and your emotions are concealed. They're dealing with a level of concealment, right? So it's dealing with a level of secrecy. So pretty much all things you are doing are very secret, as Pisces represents the dreamer. So the 12th house also deals with karma, because all karma is stored into the unconscious mind, and that's essentially where we deal with our karma. For those who may not understand karma, we deal with our karma through the 12th house of concealment. The reason why you don't see it with your eyes is because it's concealed. It's not that it's not there, it's just that it is pushed into the back of the mind or the unconscious mind. So when it actually does manifest, it manifests very suddenly because it was concealed. So whenever we run into mistakes and setbacks and all things that we didn't see coming, that's based upon it being in the unconscious mind, which deals with concealment. And because it deals with concealment, there was no way to perceive it with the physical eye. The only way to perceive it is with the subconscious eye, or the third eye, because the subconscious mind again correlates to the moon, and the moon correlates to the third eye. That's why we have to activate feminine energy to activate the third eye. And feminine energy just represents the Kundalini. The Kundalini snake is the feminine snake. So we have to tap into the feminine currencies and all things spiritual to even activate the third eye. So this is the correspondence between this all. All right. Let's go back up. Yeah, any tips on how to open the third eye? Yes, that's what we were just speaking about. I think I've outgrown my meditation techniques. Can you advise on other techniques? Yeah, let's make sure the environment is cool. We ain't speaking none of this into the public, right? This is a dead concealment. You see, I'm being very concealed, so basically, like, if anybody was around me, they wouldn't even understand intricately in code. You see, like, you only really understand if you had this committed to memory. See, some people it just floats on the surface and just goes, in one ear, out one ear, because it's just words they know, but it's not associated with a particular consciousness. See, some people know a lot of words, but they don't have the consciousness that is associated with the vibration, right? So we can say most people are familiar with the word of astrology, but there's very few people who know the intricacies of astrology, right? We know that there's a vast difference between knowing what a word is and knowing what the actual reality is. That's the difference between faith and non-faith, meaning a person who's just trying to figure things out all the time versus a person that stands on what they know, and what they know is based on the symbolism in which they have committed to memory. Once again, so going back to the question, running out of meditation techniques, well, it's all about what type of person you are. Like, meditation just may not be your thing. You may be a person that needs to meditate when they're in motion, when they're running. So you may be a person that just needs to get up and jog and do your meditation while you jog. You may not be a person that just wants to sit down and just, go in half lotus position and do this and that. So if you're not a person that is built for that form of meditation, then just try another active form. Try dynamic meditation. If you're not with the passive meditation, then try the dynamic meditation. That's all. You just got to switch your form of meditation. You just may not be a person. Again, that's not for everybody. I know people be pushing that like that's for everybody, but again, some people are more passive and some people are more dynamic. If you're more dynamic, then be more dynamic. All right. What's the code word behind vote? Celebrities keep pushing that. Well, let's break it down. Let's figure it out right now. So I'm not going to give you no premeditated answer. Let's figure it out right now in real time. So so V is 22, right? O is 15, T is 20, E is 5, right? You see, when you just know it, you just know it. So we got 22, 15, 20, and 5. So we got the code words, but we don't have to do it individually. Let's just break it down to one single digit, right? So we have 4, 5, 9, 2, 5. So volt breaks down to the energy of 7, which corresponds to the energy of Neptune. And we know Neptune represents our past lives. So volt represents our past lives, meaning we have to always look at the foundation of these parties, whether it be Republican or whether it be Democrat, right? What is the past life? We know about the current life, but what is the past life? Because the past life is very telling to the future life, right? So vote, this corresponds to number 7. Number 7 is also the most spiritual number. Neptune also corresponds to the hanged man. So when you take it to the tarot, Neptune corresponds to the hanged man, which is reverse, a man who is dealing with water sacrifice, right? So that's what it is, right? So vote corresponds to 7, which is the most spiritual number, which deals with the dream plane, which deals with the energy of Neptune, which deals with the hanged man, and the hanged man deals with invoking a spiritual experience. So the hanged man is trying to induce a spiritual experience in a dynamic way, right? The hanged man is trying to induce a psychedelic experience, because Neptune also corresponds with drugs. So a psychedelic experience that is self-initiated, a psychedelic experience that is self-initiated, right? So the psychedelic experience is whatever we hope to get on the other side. So whether you vote red or blue, it's all about whatever you hope to get on the other side. It's all a hope, because none of this is set in law yet. So it's all a hope. You're basing the whole vote on hope, because nothing is, 22 plus 15 plus 20 plus 5, yes. That is the VOTE. If you correspond the numbers with, it's numerology. If you correspond the numbers, A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, all the way to Z, Z will be 26. So if you break it down, so the V will be the 22nd letter, the O will be the 15th letter, the T will be the 20th letter, and the E will be the 5th letter. So if you reduce that, of course you're going to have the whatever that adds up to, and whatever that adds up to is reduced to a single digit, then that's what you get, all right? 8. So let me check the mathematics. So somebody said 8. All right, so let's do it slowly. So V is 22. Because if I made a mistake, then I'll correct it right now, right? So we don't have to do a video later. It broke down to us. So if I did it too fast, we'll correct it right now. Then I'll get right back to the questions, because I don't want to mislead anyone. But someone made a $4.99 donation, Kareem. Salute to you, Kareem. I appreciate the donation, always. So yes, let me slow it down for those who may not understand. When it comes to numerology, you want to reduce the letters to a single digit. Now that's if you're corresponding letters to numbers, which you should do anyway, because this allows you to make things a lot easier, right? Okay. So yeah, they're saying 8. Okay. So if it's 8, then it's 8. All right. So V is 22. 22 then breaks down to a 4. So from the V, we have a 4, because O is the 15th letter. From the 1 and the 5, we get a 6. So we have a 6 and a 4. We add the 6 and the 4 together, we get 10. Then the 10 is reduced to a 1, okay? Then we have the T, and we have the E, right? So the T, we know 20. 20 is reduced to 2, and the E is 5. 2 plus 5 gives you 7, so 1 and 7 gives you 8. So you guys are absolutely correct. So I was 1 letter off. See, you checked me right then and there. I bow down. So let's get it right. So vote actually corresponds to 8. And we already know 8 brings you back to this satanic energy, right? So I guess this is why we have, because now, instead of it being the water element, now we're dealing with the earth, right? So Saturn represents all things long term, right? So we know voting represents something that is years into the future. So let's just say whoever the next president will be, they will be so for the next 4 years. So the vote corresponds to a long-term situation, and we know that each president can have a total of 2 terms, which corresponds to the 8 number, right? Each president is granted 2 terms. 4 plus 4 gives us the 8. So each president can have a total of 8 years, and we know 8 years corresponds to the 8, or vote, the word vote now, right? So that's the correspondence from the vote to the 8 right then and there, because there's a energy behind the number 8, because the number 8 corresponds to build or destroy, right? And if we already know that 8 corresponds to Satan, this is the energy of androgyny. Androgyny represents the energy of the masculine principles and the feminine principles together, right? So that's why when we look at the imagery of the Baphomet, we have androgynous feature, we have feminine features, and we have masculine features. So the 8 represents the energy of androgyny when the energies are blending together at the same time, which is a alchemical thought, right? So this is dealing with an energy or the earthly element of alchemy when the masculine and the feminine principles blend together and correspond gracefully. So when the masculine and the feminine principles correspond gracefully, this represents the energy of Saturn, because we have 3 earth numbers. The number 4, the number 6, and the number 8 are all earth energies, because 6 will correspond to Venus and 4 will correspond to the energy of Rahu if we go to the Vedic numerology, right? So just to give it a twist, we'll make the 4 the Rahu, which represents the ego. The 6 represents Venus, and Venus represents, being able to perfect your home-based business. Venus represents shape and form, right? Then 8, Saturn represents death, right? So we'll do it, okay. So, yeah, actually when I think about those, it makes sense. So we deal with the 3 elements of Earth, because we talked about the 3 water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. So if we deal with the 3 earth numbers, the 4, the 6, and the 8, this actually takes us to the 4 will represent a symbol. The 3 will represent, not the 3, the 6 will represent the shape and the form of that symbol. Then the 8 will represent the depth of that symbol. So we have the symbol in 2D. We essentially have a symbol in 3D, that would be the 6. Then we have a symbol in 4D, where you can twist it and you can actually see it from any angle, right? Or you can say from the top. We'll look at, yes, okay, so there we go. See, as I'm speaking about it, I'm beginning to formulate how I should speak it out. So the 4 will represent a symbol. The 6 will represent a 3D picture of that symbol from straight ahead, you looking at a 3D image straight ahead. Then the 8 will represent you looking at it from above, the bird's eye view, right? So you can see the depth. So you got the symbol, the 3D image, so you got the 2D image, you got the 3D image, then you got the energy of looking at it from the bird's eye view, right? Yeah, so going back to vote, so I didn't went all over the place, right? So going back to vote. So that's why a president has a total of 8 years to be able to affect the subconscious mind of the people. So if we look at the last president, if we look at Barack Obama, he was the last president that had that effect on people. He was president for a total of 8 years. And we see, because he was in our subconscious minds for 8 years, people have a certain image of him, whether they like him or they not. They either like him or they don't, right? And everyone has their reasons. So it gives a fixed opinion. So you can say everyone has a fixed opinion about Barack Obama. It's either positive or negative, right? But it's fixed. There's not too many people who's just really in the middle. I don't really know what to think about Obama. No one really knows. Either they like him or they don't, right? It's the same thing with Trump. If Trump wins, he would be president for another 4 years, and it would be a total of whether people have a fixed reality, whether they like them or they don't, right? So we don't have to get into, the who's, what's, and why they should or why they shouldn't. So for a total of 8 years, this gives you a fixed opinion of a person. And when you have a fixed opinion of this person, this gives them power. This gives them power into your own subconscious mind, right? So that's why Barack Obama still has power, even though he's not in office. He's not writing any laws into play, but he still has influence. That's how that works. Obama still has influence, even though he doesn't have the power to scribe law, but he can influence law. He can definitely influence it, and that's a power in and of itself. the power of influence, right? So for those who want to understand influence, just think about Obama, and that's also giving you a better understanding of the 8th frequency, which corresponds to Saturn. Once you are fixed into people's subconscious mind, like, people will help you just from who you are. It's the same thing with celebrities, right? That's why they have the stars in Hollywood. They have the stars on the ground. So if we want to talk about the 8 represents the star that is on the ground. So think about the Hollywood walk. Stars on the ground, excuse me. What does it represent when stars are on the ground? It means people who have a fixed location in your subconscious mind. It's a fixed location in the subconscious mind. And when that location is fixed, that gives them the power to influence you. So if you see this person on a commercial, you may just buy the product. If you have a emotional attachment to that person or an emotional connection to that celebrity or whoever it may be. So because they influence your emotional state or the intelligence of your heart, then that guarantees whatever they stand by, you will accept if you are open and accepting to them. And if you are on the opposite end, whatever they standing next to, you're going to reject. But you either have a positive or a negative, and it's fixed. It's not really something that's changing, right? Because the 8 deals with the earth element. So that's the difference between the water element that's always changing and the earth element that's fixed and solidified and not changing. All right? So let's get back to the questions. Let me see how much we are in battery. All right. What's your opinion on sun gazing? Yeah, I literally just took pictures of the sunset literally before I went live. Before I went live, like, the sun was beautiful. So yes, if you have the opportunity to gaze into the sun at sunrise or sunset, definitely take that opportunity. So it ain't even about the benefits. It's just really just a purifying, this is, this admiring nature. It puts you in alpha brainwaves. It will have a positive effect on your being. So there's no negatives to sun gazing. So if you have the opportunity, definitely take the opportunity to sun gaze. I have some symbols in mind, but what are some symbols do you suggest that I meditate on? It all depends on what culture you're comfortable with or what culture you want to introduce yourself to, because all cultures have symbols. So if it's a culture that you're familiar with, that you're comfortable with, then utilize those cultures, or utilize a culture in which you want to become comfortable with. So I would say, that's more of a personal thing, because that's the water element. The water element is based upon what is personal to you. So utilize your creativity and utilize what is really personal. Because the symbols I used was based on what was personal to me. Like, the reason I chose Amun Asha Renew is based on, I used to play with Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and that's based on the Egyptian mysteries and Egyptian science. Right? So I already had a correlation. So that just wasn't something I pulled out of a hat. That's based on, I've been into the Egyptian mysteries, since a child, since single digits, basically. I believe Yu-Gi-Oh came out in 1999, so basically single digits, right? So that's based on me, so I wouldn't tell someone else to utilize those symbols if they have no correlation to that. So it's all based on what you have a connection to, what you have a correlation to, because that's what's going to make sense to you. That's what's going to introduce itself to you. And that was the first energy that came to me, like, without me requesting it. So it's one thing, when you activate the symbols and the spirits come to you. But the first spirit that came to me without me introducing anything, I'm just living my life, and the spirit that came to me was an Egyptian spirit. I think I told the story, I think 2 times, it's Osiris and Sekhmet, I pretty much introduced it. But essentially, this is all based on, you have to go back to your childhood, go back to your past life, what were the things that you were connected to as a child. Then you have to correspond it with a deity. Which it may have been a favorite show, a favorite toy, you have to base it on a certain archetype, and you have to meditate upon that archetype. Remember, it all goes back to the archetypes. So whatever we were drawn to, whatever we were attached to, is connected to an archetype. So once we discover what that archetype is, then we can go deeper into that universe, because all the universes are infinite. All right? which should take on predatory spirituality. People on the left-hand path, more specifically, black adepts practice it. I personally don't need it, to be honest. Predatory spirituality, there's no such thing. There's no such thing as predatory spirituality. Like those two words don't correspond at all. Why? Because if something is predatory, you can't say it's based upon the spirit. Because if we're talking about the left-hand path, and we're talking about Lilith, and we're talking about Samael, and we're talking about the vampire spirits, so on and so forth, if that's what you're talking about in terms of predatory, working with the vampire spirits or working with the energy of Lilith, because this is all, witchcraft and vampirism, going back to Pombagira, the vampire spirit. So if predatory spirituality is you're basically talking about the vampire energy, right? And we know the vampire energy, we spoke about that before, that all goes back to the energy of Draco, the constellation of Draco, right, dealing with the Draconians. But, there's many different forms of the vampire energy. And you can say, that's what the dark arts is based on the vampire energy, the succubus and the incubus. If we want to take it to the spiritual dimension, the succubus and the incubus is based on those type of energies. If you look at all that as predatory, it's not predatory. Why? Because it's more so, I guess I got to get 48 laws of power with it, right? I got to take it to 48 laws of power. Like we got to understand that there's a book called Mind Control, how to mind control people without them knowing or caring. It's like it's not even something that you can say somebody fell victim to. Why? Because nobody can make you do anything. Nobody can make you do anything. No one can, again, unless they physically do something, no one can force you. It's all about influence, and that's what we've been talking about this whole time. It's all about influence. So if we're talking about predatory, if we're talking about vampire, if we're talking about incubus, if we're talking about succubus, it's all about influence. Nothing can make you do anything. So if we're talking about vampirism, Lilith, Samael, the vampire spirit, Satan, the devil, and all left-hand paths, this is all dealing with influence. You have a mastery of influence. Because if you have mastery of influence, then you are influencing. You're not forcing anybody, so it's not the same as somebody putting a gun to your head and taking your life and you couldn't do anything about it. If somebody walk up on you and start having a conversation with you and you choose to have a conversation with them and they have the power of influence and maybe influence your opinion on certain things, that doesn't make them a predator because they were able to influence you with their words because they know how to put words together. That's the same thing with hip hop. It's either, but I guess some people consider hip hop negative. Some people consider hip hop bad because of the language that's used. They consider it disrespectful. They consider the words predatory because it's based in drugs and, influence. They say that's the same thing about hip-hop, right? They say the same thing about hip-hop. We've been called super predators, by the Clintons before. This is all the same thing. So you got to throw hip-hop into there if you really want to talk about the predatory spirituality, because hip-hop ain't forcing nobody to do something either, but hip-hop is all about influence, right? So if we're talking about the same, you have to put hip-hop in that same category. If it's all about influence, there's no force. And that's also the energy of Saturn. That's the energy of Satan. It's all about influence. It's never force. That's the whole science of the streets. Honestly, it's all about influence, your mastery over influence, right? But again, if you're not religious, then you don't really see all these things as a problem because you're not forcing anybody to do anything. But if you're religious with it, like maybe that's wrong. But again, you have to invert your consciousness to even understand the opposite things, right? So it all depends. They make it their own philosophy. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? You're supposed to understand something from a personal perspective, right? You're supposed to do that, because if you're just repeating what somebody else said and you didn't put it into practice, so you don't even know if it's true or not, then we can't really, I would say try it for yourself. Don't judge it, try it. Instead of saying you don't need it, actually try it so that you can understand it. Not because you need it, because you don't need it. If you don't need it, then try it to understand it from the inside out. So the only way you're going to understand it is you actually do it. So you have to, like, oh, I don't need to do it. Of course you don't need to, but try it so you can understand it. You can't understand anything without having experience. So if you never experienced the dark side, then you maybe have to experience the dark side to understand it. And that will be the only reason for you to do it, right? For understanding. So put that work in for understanding instead of a need or an attachment to it. So you would actually be miles ahead of the game because you don't have an attachment to it, because you are going in with a philosophical mind and not an emotional mind. So you actually will have more mastery over it, and that's how a master is supposed to be anyway. So you actually would be going into the left-hand path for the right reasons, right? So let's look at it from an inverted perspective. Let's see. I think I'm getting depressed because I live with my mom, who is severely depressed. She's disabled, and I'm like her only child that can care for her. I feel like I'm losing hope for all life. Just change the energy of your home. It's really that simple. Remember, no one is fixed in stone. A person that is depressed cannot be depressed if they embody the opposite energy. As simple as that. You just have to change the energy in your home. Change the energy vibration. I've already made videos about how to change the vibration of your home. Go watch the video, how to change the vibration of your home, and change the vibration of your home. It's really that simple, right? Because if it can't be done utilizing the conscious mind, then you got to do it with the unconscious mind. And you have to change your home vibration to do that. So just put the magic work in. Last night I was taking a walk and I saw a tall black figure ran past me. What should I do? Nothing at all. Go deeper into the experience. Obviously, if that was a spirit, they wanted you to acknowledge it. They wanted you. That's why they ran past you. They didn't run past nobody else. If they ran past you, then they did that on purpose, and they did it on purpose so that you can acknowledge it. So it's all about, how do you feel about the spirit acknowledging you? How do you feel about that? And that's what you do about it. How do you feel about the spirit going out of its way to acknowledge you, instead of you looking at it from a different perspective? How do you feel about it? Can you suggest any energetic protection for Scorpio specifically as we grow and expand, such as one of the seals of Solomon? Forgive me if you answered this already. Well, no, everyone has a personal jinn. So that's the first thing. Everyone has a personal jinn already. Remember, you got one angel, one demon. We already know that. So we all have of the 72 goetic seals, we all have a personal one. You just have to find out which one is your personal jinn. And you can do so through going into meditation, through working with the seals and see which one works the best for you. So you have to discover your personal jinn, of course, It may take as long as you want it to take, but you must discover your personal jinn. So you put the magical work in so that you discover your personal jinn, right? So work within the 72 and see which one speaks the loudest to you based on how the spirit speaks to you, all right? What's your opinion on the 21st December solar flash? I have no opinion on it. That is a part of the sun and its cycles. Because again, everybody want to go into these specific dates. It's like every year there's some special day we're supposed to pay attention to. I don't really follow none of that. The world was supposed to end 20 years ago. It's like now the world's going to end in December. It's like we're always supposed to pay attention to these special dates. I don't know why. Just commit to memory the equinoxes, your solar return, your lunar returns, things that actually correspond to you, then we'll be good to go. The world ain't going nowhere. The world is not going to end. It's like there's people been trying to say that shit. It's not going anywhere. If COVID ain't going to destroy the earth, then what will? If COVID is not going to wipe off the entire planet, then we're set to go, right? Ain't nothing going to happen special except whatever you put into play. Whatever you put into play will affect you. So it's all about what you reap, what you sow in Capricorn season, because you're talking about Capricorn season. So you will reap what you sow. What's a lunar return is when the moon is in the same degree it was at the time of your birth. That's your lunar return. When the moon goes back to the same degree that it was in at the time of your birth, which happens 12 times a year. So you have 12 lunar returns every year. One birthday, but 12 moon days, moon birthdays. You have one solar birthday, but you have 12 lunar birthdays. That is called a lunar return. Have you heard anything about the Shams, the Arabic word? It's a 13th century Gigamore or Gilmore. Gamori, I know what you're talking about. Book of Spells on Arabic magic and a manual for achieving esoteric spirituality. What are your thoughts on Arabic magic? My thoughts on Arabic magic is it is a form of magic. If it speaks to you, then work with it. It is a form of magic. You know, you got Hebrew spells, Arabic spells, Latin spells. It's all based on language. That's why you choose a language that speaks to you. The language that spoke the loudest to me was Hebrew, even though I had been around Arabic my entire life because I've been around Muslims my entire life. So I've been hearing Arabic my entire life. But in terms of what spoke the most to me was Hebrew. For someone else, it may be Latin, or it may be another language. It all starts with language. So it's all about which language speaks to you. And all language has a magical form attached to it, and that's how you discover the true nature of the language. But it has to be what speaks the loudest to you. All right. I asked last time about the evil eye. How does using Satan counter that if Satan is evil? Because you can't view Satan in a religious context. Evil don't have anything to do with Satan. Satan didn't create evil. God created evil, right? If Satan didn't create himself, then how did Satan create evil? So Satan don't have anything to do with evil. It's just an interpretation, but everything is multi-layered. So if you view these things literally, then you will get lost in the sauce. It's not supposed to make any sense, and that's why most people don't ever dig into these arts, because it doesn't make any sense. Because when you dig into these arts, it's telling you to work with the dark side. It's telling you to work with the devil. It's telling you to work with Satan. It's telling you to work with Lucifer. And people are like, why would I ever do that? I'm of God. I'm for God. You see, that's the whole mind fuck to keep you away. So it's not supposed to make any sense if you're looking at it one-dimensionally. You have to look at it from a non-religious perspective, from an occult perspective, if you choose to do so, because most people will never get past that veil. But if you want to go past that veil, you have to study the occult. That means all things that you thought was bad or evil actually have a actual real symbolism, and they have a real effect on your reality. So it's up to you to figure out what effect does the Satan, the Lucifer, the devil, what does it do for me when I bring it up? If you really want to know what Satan do, summon Satan. I have a video on that too. If you want to know what Satan does, just watch the video. I already did that too years ago. The only way for you to figure out what's real and what's not is if you actually do it for yourself, instead of questioning it. Bring it to life and see what happens. Bring it to life. And if something negative happens, then you know not to mess with it. But if something different happens, then you know, okay, maybe this is not what I thought it was. Only you can crack that code, but that's the whole purpose. You have to get over that subconscious and that unconscious energy. It's not the easiest thing to do, especially if you grew up having one perspective. It's not easy to invert your whole consciousness and to look at the opposite side and to see what's actually going on. It's not the easiest thing to do, but that's why it's called the great work. In alchemical terms, it's called the great work for that reason. It is not the easiest thing to do. Most people are not taking on that study. They don't have the time for it. That's why it's called the great work. And all things great is of the eight. All things great is of the eight, which is the infinity sign, right? Infinity sign. All things great is of the eight, right? Right, so keep that in mind. All things great is of the eight. That's funny. That's funny. So if there's only influence, then there's no such thing as possession. Exactly. You can say that. You can say that. Because all things you possess is temporary. All possessions are temporary. You don't permanently possess anything. You don't even permanently possess your body. Right? We don't permanently possess anything. So all things we do possess is temporary. This is why the Buddha said don't have attachments to this physical plane, because all attachments and all possessions are temporary. So you enjoy it while it lasts, but all things are temporary. You're not going to have your partner forever. You're not going to have your body forever. You're not going to have your children forever. They're not going to have you forever. All this is temporary. So why have an attachment to it? But that's what creates reincarnation. That's what creates karma, because people have an over-attachment to things that are temporary. And that's the true creator of karma. When you hold on to things that need to be released, because all things are temporary. It's not the easiest thing to do. Again, this is why it's called the great work. None of this is easy, but I'm just explaining to you the process of why this is occult and hidden and secretive and concealed and not discussed amongst the public, because all they're going to do is scrutinize it. All they're going to do is make an excuse why it's bad and they need to go and stay somewhere else. All they're going to do is make excuses, because they're not going to ever put the work in. Because you got to actually conquer your own fear. You got to invert your whole consciousness, and there's going to always be an excuse why you shouldn't do that. Always be an excuse why you should do that. Does matcha clean really work? Try it for yourself. I heard some celebrities get hit from the back for fame. They do something like that. Well, you just question for fame. That's why they did it. They undergo a ritual for fame. That's exactly what it. If they did, they did. People gonna love them either way, right? So why do we even care what they did? People are still gonna love them. They're still gonna be supported. Why do we even care what they did? So yeah, if they did it for those reasons, then that's the reason that they did it. What if I live with a person that abused me in the home as a child? Also, other people in the home may not want home environment change. If you're the God of your reality, then be the God. If you're not the God, then you shouldn't even be asking questions. If you're not the God of your reality, then if you feel like, oh, maybe I shouldn't change the reality, who's going to tell you no? Because they don't even understand what you're doing. They not even going to notice. It's not like you're putting a sigil on your door. That's not how it works. But if you feel you're not powerful enough, then you shouldn't even be asking the question. If you're not the God of your, like, yo, I'm gonna do it. I don't give a fuck what anybody says, because this needs to change. All right. If you're not gonna put your foot down, then why even ask? So what I'm getting, like, you can make excuses all day, or you can put the work in. See, the excuse or put the work in. Those are your only two options. Those are your only two options. Are there any more deities that were born before creation like Thoth? If so, who are they? Every pantheon has a deity that's pre-creation, or that's self-created. Every pantheon has a self-created deity. So that's in any pantheon. So I would be naming spirits forever. So just check any pantheon. They all have self-created spirits. You can just type it in Google, self-created spirits. And they take you to spirits all around the world. So, you can knock yourself out with whichever culture speaks to you. Occult meaning of tattoos is earth magic. Tattoos are earth magic. So if you understand the earth magic, if you understand symbols, if you understand the subconscious mind, then it opens up portals in reality to certain dimensions. That's why you put it on your body. It's not on nobody else's body, so it affects you. It's what you have to deal with, right? So it's you opening up portals that you want to summon. It's a form of I'm not going to say necromancy, but it's a form of sorcery. You can say it's a form of sorcery. I didn't know we all had a personal angel and jinn. Absolutely. Because again, I don't know if that's in Christianity, but I know that's in Islamic teaching. You have a personal scribe and a personal jinn. How should I approach the spirit How should I approach the spirit when taking a walk or start a conversation? It's based on how the spirit corresponds to you. You may not know. If you don't know, then you have to allow the spirit to speak to you. Like, I can't tell you how the spirit will communicate to you, because that's based on your own personal psychic abilities. That's based upon your own bloodline and your birthrights. But however the spirit chooses, but you know it's going to be one of the four elements, so just always work with the elements. As long as you are working with the elements, it's going to be one of the four elements. They're either going to speak to you from the earth, they're either going to speak to you through the airs, through the fires, or through the waters. So you have to induce the elements to see which one activates when you put that work in. So you have to start with elemental magic. See which of the four elements works the best for you, and start building upon that elemental magic. And every element corresponds to spirits and deities, right? Then you can start building your reality from there. Do you see any danger in wishing? Society accepts so many wishing ceremonies without seeing the occult nature of it. A ceremony is just a ceremony. It is what it is. And society should have no bearing on your occult reality. So what society do is what society has always done, which should be the opposite of what you do. So the only reason society should matter to you is what not to do. That's the only reason why society should matter, is what not to do. What are your thoughts from a spiritual perspective on the Shiites' belief that only Allah can select religious leaders, and that therefore all successors must be direct descendants of Muhammad's family? Peace be upon him. That is Saturn. That is a Saturn-based system. Islam is a Saturn-based system. The religion of Islam is based on the orbit of Saturn. The holy city of Mecca is based on the orbit of Saturn. That's why they worship the black stone. All Muslims pray to the black stone, because that corresponds with the energy of Saturn. So that's just another Saturn reference. So to understand the secrets of Islam, you have to go deeper into the science of Saturn. Thoughts on 5D and diamond body activation? There's no thoughts. It's just, we don't even need to talk about the diamond body if people haven't even perfected their astral body. If it's a natural progression, then follow the steps. Start with the physical body, then go to the astral body, then eventually you will make it to the etheric body, then the etheric body will eventually make it to the diamond body. It's all a process of evolution. All right? So we don't have to think 7 and 8 levels ahead. We don't have to do that. We're just gasping ourselves when we're thinking way too far ahead, when we need to focus on the astral body. We got to perfect the astral body. So before we think about any other bodies, we have to perfect the astral body. Can you do a past life video? Yeah, I can definitely speak on past lives. But very briefly, it all corresponds to your South Node in astrology. Your past lives are found in your South Node in astrology. So if you want to know about your past life, you have to study your South Node. What do you think about the 15th century crusade against whites? Like, why did they think everyone was a witch? Why were they so concerned at the time? Well, you got to go back and study law. You have to go back and study law. Like, there's always been a fear of the dark side. Like, you just have to study religion. Like, for example, Christianity has always had enemies. There's always been cults that were anti-Christianity. Like, that has always been on the planet. So there's always been a nemesis to religion. Religion has always had a nemesis. So at one point in time, that nemesis was witchcraft. In the 21st century, is it witchcraft? No. But in the 15th century, was it witchcraft? Absolutely. So that was just the opponent of religion of that particular time. And there will always be a nemesis of religion, because it's not based in reality. So it will always be a nemesis. So that particular nemesis at that time was witchcraft. Was witchcraft any different than anything else? Was witchcraft just the darkest of the dark? Absolutely not. It was just something that it was the religion that predated religion, essentially. It was a religion that predated religion, so everybody was on that, so they was pushing that religion out. So if it was a city of 100,000 people and they all was witches, then all of a sudden Christianity comes in and eventually they take 20,000 people, then 30,000 and 40,000. They're slowly taking over. So they, of course, they're going to become the nemesis, and they're going to set laws against them. You know, they're going to suppress them because now they're going to have political influence and cultural influence. They're going to have all this influence. So those people will continue to get oppressed until they're pretty much gone. That's just how it works in terms of that's just how religion, you know, came to dominate the earth. It was done with force. So if you want to understand the difference between influence and force, religion is force and the occult is grace, right? There is no force involved. It's all influence. So religion is force, then occult is influence. Religion is force, occult is influence. Right. So if we want to understand the difference between the right hand path and the left hand path, one is force, and one is influence. All right. And the Necronomicon, it says Murdoch is not to be called when no others will do, and it's a most terrible responsibility to do so. So what did that mean with your experience? If you work with him, yes, I've worked with Murdoch. And I didn't give a fuck about any of those definitions. I just summoned them one by one, the same thing I did with the Goetia. I summoned them one by one, so I've worked with all 72. I worked with all 50 names of Murdoch. I just summoned them one by one. So I went in reverse. I didn't start with Murdoch first. I did Murdoch last. So I started at 50 and I climbed my way up. And when I hit Murdoch, I called him up. And the only thing I did was change the vibration of my home. And he, you know, it's a very similar energy to Thoth. So. Like if we're reading those descriptions, we're just gonna get thrown off. It's every reason why you shouldn't work with it, right? Oh, don't summon me unless it's a dire importance. That's every reason why to leave the shit alone, right? It's just another reason, right? But again, you know, it's just like some of the Goetia spirits is super dangerous. And again, I had some crazy experience with the Goetia. I still summoned them. I done seen fights break out. I done seen some crazy shit fucking with the Goetia. Still did it. Because I got the experience. And it is what it is. I'm like, all right, some of these motherfuckers is more ruthless than others. I still had to learn. So now I know based on my own experience, not based off of what somebody else said or what was based on the description. Just use your personal experience to trump anything else. That's the only way you're going to truly know for yourself, is personal experience. Thoughts on the 5 root races and the other 2 root races going to manifest? Well, you're talking about the teachings of Blavatsky that's mentioned in the Secret Doctrine, also the Isis Papers. And my thoughts on it is, she said in her works that the 5th root race will be birthed in America. She said out of her own mouth that the 5th root race will be birthed in America, right? For those who are familiar with her work, she said the 5th race will be birthed in America. Is that something we see or not? So we just got to look with our own eyes and see if it's real or if it's not real. If everybody wanted to come to America, and we know that to be a fact, America has always had that influence all the way up until recently. If we take it pre-COVID, you know, America has always been a dreamland. You know, the land of money, gold, drugs. That America has always had that energy. So we know that to be true, just utilizing our own eyes, right? She also said the world will be ran by nuclear power eventually. Eventually the world will be ran by nuclear power. And is that not where we see the world is going? So we just got to utilize our own eyes and see, do we see the seeds of what will be to come in the next centuries? Do we see the seeds? Because all seeds are planted centuries before they happen, because Blavatsky works was talking about the future. So the seeds are always planted. Can you recognize the seeds that will sprout into the actual reality that we will not even be around to see, or at least not in this form? We'll probably be around in a different form, but just not in the current form. But do you see the seeds of those words being made manifest with your own eyes? Because if you see it with your own eyes, you know it to be true. If you don't see it with your own eyes, you know it to be false. Experience with Zarabanda. Zarabanda is the path opener of Palo Mayombe. So every time I work with Zarabanda, I make sure to take myself to the train tracks, walk upon the train tracks, work with iron, the god of iron. So Zarabanda is, it's a good energy to, break spells and hexes, so if you're feeling bogged down, if you need to get up, get out the house, if you feel, low in your vitality, then Zarabanda, it'll activate the solar plexus, it'll activate your courage, it'll activate your willpower, it'll get you back into your masculinity, right? Whether you are male or female, it'll get you into your masculinity. So that's the experience with Zarabanda. I appreciate that, a goddess. So that's why this mega statement is being used in the U.S., making the American dream real again. Exactly, influence, not force, because America has been all about force. Ultimate force. That's why the root chakra is in America, and the root chakra corresponds to Saturn or Satan or influence. This is a land of influence. That's why the stars are on the ground. People care more about the stars on the ground than the stars up above. Is that not facts? People care more about these earthly stars than the celestial stars, because this is the land of influence. It is no way around it. No way around it. In a tarot, the Fool is ruled or associated with Uranus and has the number 0, and the Magician is Mercury. Does Uranus have any connection with the number 0? Is the Fool the first card, or is the Magician? The Fool is the first card. The numbers, again, because most people don't understand the mathematics, right? Roman numerals don't have a 0. Most people don't even know where the 0 comes from. The 0 comes from the Arabic numerals. We use Arabic numerals. So the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, that is Arabic numerals. As we see, the Roman numerals do not have a 0. That is only made manifest with the Arabic numerals. And we know the Arabic language is highly mathematical. That's why Islam is mathematics, and that goes back to the Arabic language. We're not talking about the religion of Islam. We're just talking about the language. The Arabic language is highly mathematical, right? So the 0 comes from the Arabic language. So when the 0 was added to the tarot, because the tarot originally had Roman numerals, and some tarot cards still do have Roman numerals, especially the Thoth deck. The Thoth deck has Roman numerals for all of the other 21 dimensions, but for the Fool, it utilizes the 0. I thought the 0 was from India. No, the 0 is an Arabic numeral. Right? We don't use Indian numerals. 0, we don't use Indian numerals, right? Or Hindi numerals. We don't use those numerals. We use Arabic numerals. The whole number system is Arabic. That whole system is Arabic. So it all comes from the Arabic system. Most people don't know that. We're not taught that in school, but that's just a reality, right? So the Fool is the first card, which is a 0, which comes from the Arabic. So the tarot has Arabic and Roman numerology. Most people don't know that. So the tarot utilizes the Arabic because the tarot acknowledges that 0 actually is worthy of respect. So the tarot acknowledges that the 0 is worthy of respect. So they pulled on the Arabic energy, and they also kept the Roman numerals as well. So the tarot, every tarot, well, I'm not going to say every tarot, but some tarots have the Arabic 0 and the Roman. So they combine both of those cultures together just to make it even more complete. Lilith and Scorpio. Lilith and Scorpio is Lilith basically having access to other people's resources through the use of sex, if we want to be plain and clear. Gaining access to other people's resources through the sexual arts, through the tantric arts, right? Just to keep it simple. How can I lose fear? To reemerge courage, to think about courage. Just think about the opposite. If you want to feel the opposite emotion, just think about the opposite emotion. So if it's fear, then think about courage. Focus on your solar plexus and think about courage. Think about your willpower. Think about the fire element. And eventually that fear will dissolve. Have you dabbled in blood over intent? Absolutely. Only my own blood, not nobody else's. So no, I haven't haven't harmed any animals or anything like that. The only thing that's been harmed is myself as the focus. So I've drawn my own blood, absolutely. Is it worth becoming a multi-billionaire? Yeah, if you have the mind for it. You have to be a mastermind. If you're able to master your mind, why not have money? Money is a result of mind mastery anyway. So it's all levels or rank to mathematics. It's just it's a form of mathematics. It's a level of mathematics. But again, that mathematical language is a beast. What are your videos called on changing the home vibration? That's exactly what it's called. Changing your house vibration. How to change your house vibration. That's exactly what it's called. Can you go more into Tantra? I have plenty of videos on Tantra, but quickly, it is the sexual arts of rising your Kundalini, which comes from India, which comes from the 10 Mahavidas. So if you want to know about Tantra, you have to study the 10 Mahavidas. It is the secret sciences of the 10 Mahavidas, which starts at Kali. So Kali is the first Mahavita, and we know Kali made her way over to America, and that's where California get its name from the Black Mother, the Black Goddess, who is master over the Tantric arts. So mastery over the Tantric arts is the mastery over how to use influence to rise up a person's Kundalini. That's a forbidden art or a forgotten art. Most people do not even know how to do that, how to get someone like horny and fixated without having to physically touch them. Like, that's a forgotten art, that's a forbidden art, but utilizing your influence where you can actually influence a person's sexual currency. So Tantra is how to influence a person's sexual currency, right? And again, that's completely forgotten and forbidden. It's only known by, the sacred whore or the holy harlot, and those women into the darker arts. But that's not something that's just readily known to anybody. So we have a couple more minutes here before we check out. I read that symbol for Cancer can also be an apple tree somehow related to Adam and Eve. I don't know if any other possible representation for the star symbol of Cancer. It may be, it may not be, because obviously every symbol has multiple dimensions. So there's not just one symbol of anything, because astrology has evolved over time. So the symbols have changed. So if you want to go into older zodiac signs, you have to go into the arts of Hermeticism and alchemy. What are the origins of Malak? Is he as powerful as Satan? Well, if you study the clip off, Malak rules over the same clip off as Satan. They are the twin gods. So they are twin gods, so you can say they equally share power. You can definitely say that. What does Asha do as relaxation? Stay on the move. Stay mentally swift. Staying mentally swift. I always gotta stay mentally swift. I burned my last phone on invocation of an entity. Well, before you invoke, you have to invoke. If you want to master evocation, you have to master invocation. So invoke spirits before you evoke spirits. What are some tips you can give for a beginner? Conquer your fear. Like, whatever you're afraid of, go into whatever you fear. Whatever on the dark side you fear, study it and practice it. Whatever on the dark side you fear, study or practice it. What are your thoughts on the Asgard? I'm not sure what you mean by the Asgard. I'm not sure what you mean, but definitely hold that. And we'll be back next time for a live stream. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I appreciate all the supporters. Definitely get at me, ash@ashrenew.com. Business line 702-530-1197. And if you want to support me via Cash App, I shall renew. And we'll be back soon. Much love to everybody. Peace.